Ever look back on the last 5 to 10 years of your professional career and wonder how things have culminated into a large sewer drain? Just me? I've worked many jobs over the last 10 years, and I'm grateful for all of them because it's allowed me to meet some really amazing people, develop some very good friendships, help lots of people along the way, and help Mike and I reach our financial goals. However, there's a feeling inside that I've wasted a lot of my time during those years. And at the end of the day, this is my fault, but unfortunately it just took me way too long to admit it. In this video, I want to talk about some things that helped me put things together and when I realized where I was working just wasn't for me. And my hope is by talking about them, as embarrassing as they may be, this video will help give others the courage to admit what they're going through, the courage to say it out loud, and the courage to move on if needed, without wasting as much time as I did. So the first reason I should have left my job is my gut was telling me to leave, but I didn't listen to it. This may seem silly or obvious to listen to your gut intuition, but unfortunately, I overlooked mine. And looking back, it's actually kind of scary how accurate my intuition was. So here's an example from my very first job in my career. Obviously, with any first job, you have no training, no experience, and you're kind of like a deer in the headlights. And because of all that, when I first started, I thought I just had the new job jitters when my gut was saying, no, this just really isn't the place for you. I really wanted that intuition to be wrong because I had heard from several coworkers there that had been there way longer than I had to just give it 1 or 2 years and you'll start to adjust, because that's what happened for them. And maybe I just needed to give myself that time. So I kept my head down, I worked diligently, but the feeling that something wasn't right never went away. Shortly thereafter, I realized I wasn't the only one feeling this way. Some conversations with other coworkers I had that had started around the same time I did confirmed my suspicion that something very important was missing here, and all of us had voiced the same concern, and that was a huge lack of support. So for me, after 1 year passed, I realized my intuition had been right all along. The reason I was so scared to listen to my gut intuition was because I felt if I left so soon after starting, it would look bad on my resume. Now I've learned to fear something even more, and that's wasting my time at a job that just isn't for me. Time is the most valuable resource I have, and once that time's gone, I can never get it back. My advice, if your intuition is telling you you should leave your job, take it seriously. It may be new job jitters or it may be something more, but you need to try and figure it out, and don't discount your gut intuition as long as I did. So reason number 2, I noticed myself changing into someone I did not want to be. And normally I'm a pretty happy, upbeat, laid back, lighthearted kind of person. But at this job I noticed I was becoming impatient and frustrated. And this was something that was difficult to notice because it didn't happen overnight. This was a change that slowly took place over the course of a year. Initially, I thought this was just a work-life balance, so I tried to do things outside of work to see if they would help. I started exercising, reading, going out with friends more, going out with Mike, focusing on mental, spiritual, physical, and personal growth. And these activities did help, but only until after I went to work for a few days. Then I was completely back to square one, which made me realize there was something at my workplace that was causing this. After I realized this, it took me a little bit more time to pinpoint what was going on. And that was the values of my work environment were in direct conflict with mine. So I'm someone who needs a work environment that values honesty, integrity, fairness, dignity, and a passion to help others. Not only with words, but with encouragement from management. And the values that were becoming more prevalent at my job were unfairness, mediocrity, and just an overall moral degeneration. And over time that had crept in and created a work culture that was primarily driven by these traits. At this point in time, I think most people would agree it's time to move on. Well, that's not what I did. These were people I had grown to care about, and I wanted to help make things better. I decided to stay there thinking I could somehow change the culture of an entire work environment. But over time I became exhausted, run down, and just started to get sucked into those values. I realized I alone cannot change other people. That's something we each have to decide to do on our own. And in staying there longer than I should have, I was only hurting myself in the process. I could have been using that time to invest somewhere else. So if you're in a workplace where their values are in direct conflict with your own, my advice would be to seek out employment somewhere where your values do align and you don't spend a year of your life turning into someone you don't want to be. So reason 3 and 4 I wanted to put together because they're very similar, and that is a lack of leadership from management and management ignoring problems. At this job, I remember whenever I would bring up an issue or try to ask for help on a problem, it was like talking to a brick wall. And every single time something was brought up, this would happen. I think a large reason for this was management was being stretched too thin and severely overworked. So it made it difficult for them to focus on problems and try to solve them, which was a huge part of their job. And the problems I'm talking about here are not ones that they give you the freedom or autonomy to try and solve on your own. These were outside of the scope of my job, but well within the scope of management's job. So this created a huge lack of leadership. Good leadership, in my opinion, is one of the biggest things that helps to create a work environment that people want to keep coming back to time and time again. Having people to look up to, who set an inspiring example, and give others something to strive for and not settle for. Here, unfortunately, it just seemed like nobody cared. It took me 6 months to realize this and another 6 months to leave. And once again, I should have left earlier. I was taking too long to make a decision because I wanted to believe things would work out. Lack of leadership transitions perfectly into my 5th and final reason for why I should have left my job sooner, and that is unprofessional conduct, which you can guess, if there is no leadership, will only grow and get worse. What I mean by this is conduct ranging anywhere from inappropriate conversational topics all the way to aggressive confrontational interactions from other people. Not something like someone forgot to wear their dress shoes to work and instead wore flip-flops. So when I and other coworkers started noticing some unprofessional conduct, we immediately brought it to the attention of management. And often they would try to fix the problem. But over time, it continued to happen. This led to many of us having low morale because we felt like if we did report a problem, it would just take so long to fix, or it wouldn't get fixed at all. And this was the first time I had felt so lost at a job because multiple people had gone to management to try and fix these problems, but not much changed. At this point in my career, I desperately wish there was someone who had put a sign in front of my face that was flashing with big red letters, "It's time to leave now." And granted, I get no manager is gonna know everything that's going on all the time. And that's why it's so important to let them know what's happening. But if they can't correct it, things will never change. Or worse, if management is also being unprofessional, then the conduct will spread and things are just going to get drastically worse. This is when going up the chain of command is needed. Unfortunately, many don't use it because by this point, they feel so alone and as if nothing is ever going to fix the problem. If you start to notice this in your workplace and it's not being corrected, you need to move on to another job ASAP. So some measures you can take to see if a workplace is right for you, and some things I wish I had done, is after the interview, ask to walk around where you will be working. Listen to the conversations that are happening. Are they uplifting? Are they demoralizing, belittling? What are they like? Or are there no conversations happening at all? Also pay attention to looks on people's faces. Do they look happy to be there? Do they look indifferent, overwhelmed, frustrated? Also, if the manager is walking with you, pay attention to how the employees are looking at them. Is it with respect? Is it fearful? Is it indifferent? And you can pick up on body language and cues. If you can, over the phone, talk to someone who's new there and someone who's been there a while, and ask for their honest perspective of the workplace. So what if you decided your job is no longer for you? Now what do you do?
I know. It is. If your job is no longer for you, you have a handful of options. Or a handful of choices. Choice number 1 is, if you really like the company you're working for, but just maybe the particular department or the particular job isn't for you, whatever, switch jobs at the same company.
You already have references there, and people already know you, so sometimes this can be really easy to do.
Option number 2 is maybe it's more of a company problem, so then think about switching to another company.
Right. So for me, I loved what I was doing. I wanted to stay in the same field. But when I realized the company wasn't a fit for me, I switched over to a new company. And I did this after I had already been hired. And I did the things that I talked about earlier after the interview to walk around and make sure it at least seemed like it would be a good fit at first.
Choice number 3 would be switching careers entirely. So, for example, maybe going from something like IT over to healthcare.
And just keep in mind the requirements for your career change. There may be extra schooling, or you need a certificate, or maybe you don't need that at all. Just keep that in mind. So it may take some extra time for you to jump to another career. But if that's something you want to do, give it a shot.
All right, so choices number 4 and 5 are going to require a little bit of extra cash saved up on the side. So option number 4 is going to be just quit your job, and instead of working for somebody else, work for yourself. Start a business, start a YouTube channel, for example, something like that. You're going to need enough cash for this one to last yourself at least as long or longer as you think you would need to grow the business up to a certain point where you can live off the profits. This is something that Brittany and I are actually kind of doing right now. The 5th option is just to quit your job and that's it, and retire. Now, for this one, you're going to need enough money or enough income from retirement accounts to basically last until you die. There's a lot more calculations and numbers involved in that, more than the scope of this video is about. So
what's really neat is you have lots of different options and opportunities out there, and we just want to encourage you, if it's something you're considering, to look into it more.
With that being said, thanks very much for watching, guys. We appreciate it.
You can follow us on Instagram at It's Meg and Brit.
Yep. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
There's a good friend who I have that's actually a professional sewer cleaner. He's really good at what he does. You may even call him a connoisseur.
What?
Connoisseur. Like a sewer. Are you familiar with the animal who tends to favorite living in sewers?
No.
A turtle.